Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Two for Talking podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. I've got comedian Joe Bartnick alongside. You can check him out in Nashville on June 5th. Get your tickets now. And also, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, July 10th at the Pittsburgh Improv. And then I also have Josh Yohe with The Athletic alongside. You can check out all his work there. And, we're going to talk a little bit to start about the Worlds. And there's plenty of coverage about the World Championships, and especially a couple of the Penguin players that are over there from Josh and The Athletic. But guys, the Penguins, or not the Penguins, geez, Team USA wins the World Championship for the first time in 92 years. And I said pre-show to Joe, I feel really good for Mike Pizzuta because he's the one person I've ever heard that watches every single World's game, and he's a huge USA guy. So hats off to the Team USA pulling it off.
There's no question that Mike Pizzuta and Tom McMillan are the kings of USA hockey, and they are having a very good Memorial Day weekend as a result. And it's funny, this is a tournament we don't really talk about that much because it means so much more to the European countries than it does to the American. It just does. It's just the way it has always been. But I think it is relevant that Team USA, they had a couple of the big names there, including Tage Thompson, who scored the game winner in overtime. But really, it was kind of the B team that they sent over. And they were still good enough to win this tournament for the first time since 1933, which is unbelievable. And I do think it illustrates that USA hockey in general has become such of a power. Like, are they Canada? No, nobody's Canada. I mean, until somebody knocks them off their perch. I mean, the last 20 years, what they've done has been incredible. But I think United States hockey is firmly entrenched in the number 2 spot right now. And to send the B team over and to beat Sweden on their soil and then to win the gold medal, good for them, Joe. I thought that was a pretty impressive accomplishment.
Yes. It was an incredible. I mean, they haven't done it in 92 years, so it's nothing to take lightly. A happy Memorial Day weekend to you and all the veterans and their families and everybody. It's a day to be an American and to give thanks, and we'll give thanks for USA hockey. It just goes to prove that now we have a B team. I mean, anytime you can send the rejects from the Buffalo Sabres and win a world championship, that's saying something. It really is. And not to throw salt in the wound or dirt or kick the dog when he's down, but I mean, Canada had Sid and Big Mac and Jordan Binnington. And Flower, but Flower wasn't at Four Nations, but Flower's retiring. But so they had their goaltender and 2 of their 3 best centers.
Yeah. No,
and they didn't make the semifinals. They lost in the quarterfinals, I believe, right?
That's right. And there were a couple of American players who I'm sure will be in the Olympics. I'm sure Tage Thompson will be. And Zach Werenski was there as the main man on the blue line. He certainly will be in Italy in February as well. But yeah, you look at a lot of the names, and a lot of these guys are not going to be on that Olympic team, and they still did what they did. American hockey's never had this kind of depth. There might be more depth, or at least as much depth on this American team as for any other country. The difference between USA and Canada, if you want to look at it right now, just in the big picture, is just the star power. Like Canada still has McDavid and Crosby and McKinnon and Makar. Nobody can match those top 4. But you're right. In a tournament when Crosby and McKinnon were there,
right.
For the Americans to win is impressive. Now, of course, they didn't have to play Canada because Canada fell to Denmark. And I don't care if it's a B tournament or not. It's one of the bigger upsets in hockey history for a Canadian team with a healthy Crosby and McKinnon and Binnington between the pipes to lose to Denmark, especially when they were winning 1-0 with 2 minutes left. That, to me, is still the biggest story of the tournament. That was incredible.
It's terrible for Jordan Binnington's confidence is what it is. I mean, it's bad enough to have a blemish on Sid's nearly pristine international record. I mean, it's ludicrous, the serial winner. But to have that come up, when goaltending's already shaky from the Canadian side, I think the last thing Canada wanted was Sid and McKinnon to go over there and lose and have Binnington choke at the end. I mean, you couldn't think of a worse scenario, guys, for Canada.
No, you're right. And Binnington is so interesting to me. This is a guy who's won a cup. He won 4 Nations. And he played unbelievably well after 4 Nations when the Blues won in that big run. But Then he gives up a goal with 1 second left in Game 7, loses it in overtime. Then he gives up a goal in the Worlds with the goaltender pulled, then gives up another one a minute later. He's just an interesting guy historically to gauge. You never really, when he's good, he's really good. But if you're Canada and you're just going to say, yeah, he's our guy moving forward, I don't know if that's necessarily the smartest move, even though he did win 4 nations. And this tournament just went to show me, like, Canada has one problem, and they are the king of the hockey world right now. We know this. Their goaltending situation is really not very good. They don't produce goalies the way they once did. The rest of the world does. There's these European guys I've never even heard of, like standing on their heads. Like you see some of these goalies like from Austria and Latvia and Denmark. Like these guys are pretty good. Like why do the Canadians in particular have so much trouble developing goaltenders? And this has been going on for a long time. And for years they just kind of relied on Quebec to give them all their best goalies. Waugh, Brodeur, Fleury, Luongo, those guys all came from Quebec, and then they were the best Canadian goalies really for the last generation, you could argue. But the rest of Canada, especially Ontario, is really struggling to produce goalies, and yet you see Denmark and all these, minor hockey countries, and they have goalies everywhere. It's incredible to me.
It really was, though, a laid egg. Because, I mean, before that, me and a bunch of other people from U.S. and Canada were just texting and emailing just clips of Celebrini to Sid to Celebrini. It was completely just a look at this, look at clips are going viral. Celebrini's Jesus Christ, and then all of a sudden, you couldn't even believe it when it came across the wire that Canada lost.
I know.
And and forgive me, jump in if we talked about this last week, but Tage Thompson did not make the Olympic team or the 4 nations, excuse me. Tage went to prove himself.
Yeah.
And Celebrini went there to prove himself. And he certainly did. And the golden boy, Connor Bedard, decided it was better to work out in his driveway with his cousin than to go sit and become friends and learn from until last Thursday, a serial winner. Captain Canada, him and Big Mac. He thought it was better to do jumping jacks in suburban Chicago than it was to sit and learn. And if we, it's literally like, hey, David Tell and Bill Burr want to take you on the tour. No, I'm gonna hit a couple open mics in Pasadena.
Yeah. No, Connor Bedard to me has taken the school of worst PR decisions. Not even just because it's bad for his career, but also PR. You were kind of he was losing his luster a lot this year, and all of a sudden he just, doesn't take the opportunity to kind of regain some clout. I don't know. I mean, I didn't like that look, but I love that. Yeah. Chappelle wants you to open for him for the next year. What are you doing, Joe?
Yeah. It's just, to go learn. Learn how to be. It couldn't be any more celebrated. Oh, Lemieux learned from Gretzky and look at how many guys, and Josh, you were there at 4 Nations. How everyone just soaked in what it was like to sit next to Sid. Jesus did. McKinnon, they all just, polished the diamond of Sidney Crosby. And this kid just, I'm going to work out at home.
Hey, I had a 5-minute conversation with Celebrini over in Sweden a couple of weeks ago. I was blown away by his maturity. It actually, he talks the way Sid talked when he was a teenager. They're very similar in that way. And Celebrini made it very clear that one of the primary reasons he was there was just to get to know Sid and to emulate him and how important he thought it was. That kid's an unbelievable hockey player, by the way. He might be the guy in 5 years. I think he's that good. And I've talked with so many people around the hockey world in the last few months, and you ask them, who would you start a team with, Celebrini or Bedard? Every single one will tell you Celebrini. And Bedard is a wondrously talented kid, and he's still only 19 years old, so I'm not trying to knock him too hard, but I just don't understand the advice he was receiving to not go there. It makes no sense.
Well, exactly. And it's just I'm not trying to kick him while he's down, but it's literally if anyone's asked Sid, what do you think, or what anybody thinks, what would you pick, the kid who went over there and worked his ass off, or the kid who decided to stay home?
Right. It's just
It's
not like the Blackhawks have made the playoffs in any of the past 2 years. It's not like he has anything else going on in May, right?
Well, and it's not like he's going to have a better season than Celebrini next year either.
No. And it's I asked Nathan McKinnon, I said, Nate, with all due respect, why the hell are you here? Like, did Sid force you to come, or what's the deal? And he looked right at me and he said, I'm a hockey player. It's May. What the hell else am I going to do? Like, okay. And I appreciated that candor, quite honestly. I thought it was a great answer. Yeah, so Celebrini, I think I'm interested to see if he makes the Canadian Olympic team next year, quite honestly. That's no easy roster to crack.
No, I know we'll get into it later, but because the guy everyone said won't, the Rat sure looks young in Florida. But we'll get into that after in another 20 minutes. But I mean, a lot of people are like, okay, well, he'll age out. Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, Canada, their forwards are aging well. We'll say that.
Yes.
If they can figure out, I mean, I was trying to think about when you're talking about Josh. Carey Price was like the last elite goaltender to come out of Canada.
Really? Yeah. I mean,
think of anybody since then.
That's about the only one. They've got a real drought right now at that position. It's a huge problem for Hockey Canada moving forward. Obviously, like I said, they got the star power. They got the big four, and they always have stars. But if you don't have the goaltending, that's an issue. And they don't have the goaltending.
It is Memorial Day, so I'll give you a splash of summer programming. Carey Price, I thought just the all-century team. No, not when you look who was left off, and we'll hit that in July or August. But I don't know.
No, I agree. To get a little hot, if you want to get Canada mad, I was never really blown away by Carey Price.
Me neither.
Consistent. I thought he he was just like a consistent.
He was really good.
Yeah, like
him and Jari had the same amount of cups.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, if you can't, and like the only way they even got to a Stanley Cup was through that stupid COVID bubble that doesn't even like the all Canada division. Like, come on. That's my real controversial take is that the Stanley Cup and the COVID bubble doesn't count. I'm like, we should put an asterisk next to that. That the whole thing. I actually didn't really want the Penguins to win because I would have felt weird. Like it wouldn't have felt real. But anyways, that's summer programming again. But the USA Hockey, just to get on that a little bit, and you guys know, I mean, about how I'm kind of getting entrenched with it on the familial side, but they're really building a robust program, and that's what I'm learning. Like way more robust than it was 10 years ago. For those of you that don't know, and there is some really, really good hockey to watch in the USHL, like the kids that don't go to OHL, like kids in Pennsylvania, if you don't know how it works, would go to the OHL. That's where because there's an Erie team, that's where they would go. But the USHL is really coming up. And if you're a hockey fan and you're out in different parts of the country, I really highly recommend you go watch some good young hockey, 15, 16, 17-year-olds that are just playing their ass off. And they're going to be kids that you're going to know in the future. It's a new world for USA Hockey. I feel like this is important to win worlds. For USA Hockey, I feel like it's important. We won juniors, 2 out of 3 years. Now we win the worlds. We almost won the Four Nations face-off. Let's win a gold medal next year and really put our foot on the throat of Canada.
Oh, and that would. I mean, that really would. And you can see the trajectory of Team USA. It's been like this for a while now. But, I mean, the fact is we have more young American athletes playing hockey than we had 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's just the way it is. And if you want to compare to Canada, we have 10 times as many people as Canada. So if you get more and more of the young athletes playing hockey, guess what's going to happen over the course of time? It's not going to be immediate. Canada's always going to be a force in hockey. But you can see the American program getting closer and closer every year, and you can see NCAA hockey pretty much on an even playing field, I think, now with junior hockey in Canada. You can certainly make that argument at least. So it's been going on for a long time. But you got to beat them in the Olympics. That's still, until you do that, you can't really crown yourself. And USA has come close, but 2002 and 2010 they couldn't quite finish the job, and at Four Nations they couldn't quite finish the job. So this will probably be their last crack to do it in the Crosby era. That would mean a lot to USA Hockey, but you still got to kill Canada, and until you do in the big game, they're still number one.
Would that be like beating the Yankees after Jeter retires?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really. Oh, you beat Canada. Oh, but Sid's not playing for him anymore.
Right.
It's kind of not the same.
Like Tom Brady leaves the Patriots, and people were like, "We beat the Patriots." Like, you know.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
we beat the Broncos with Jake the Snake Plummer and the Tom Brady.
yeah, if
Like,
you don't do it until like 2030, even like, well, Sid's retired maybe, and McDavid's 33 years old then, past his prime maybe. It's like you'd like to beat them when they're all there. Of course, I mean you're happy to do it at any point. But like I said, that when I look at USA Hockey, just the depth. Now you look at that roster they sent over. Like only a handful of those guys might make the Olympic team. Most of them won't, but there's still a lot of good players on that team. I mean that roster they sent was no joke. So I think that's where it starts when you have that kind of depth, and ultimately you need to get the star power. Yes, they have Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, great players, but there's never been an American player who you said is the best player in the world. They've never had that guy. It's always been Sid or McDavid or Mario or Gretzky or Bobby Orr. It's always
Yager.
Canadian. Yager, the one Czech, right? So they've never had that guy. And maybe when that guy shows up, whenever he does, that will be the thing that puts them over the top.
Yeah, and it might have been Fedorov at one point. But you know what? We're never going to know about any of this because now I am just going to snap. Are you kidding me? We still have a year to go, and Russia can't play in the Olympics. It's just absolute garbage that the old men in Canada are scared to play the Russians. Oh, bring your dog to the rink if you're scared, Canada. And you're even scared to play Yagerland. It's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Sid ain't afraid. Big Mac ain't afraid. Jesus ain't afraid. Cooper ain't afraid. It's everyone in the suits in Toronto because they can't even get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Those dirtbags. So we can't lose to Russia. I want Putin to call up Canada and say, we will meet you in Reykjavik, Iceland. Let's have a summit and let's play hockey because it is bullshit that Vasilevsky can't be in that and have Gino and Ovi and Kirill and the bread man out and Marchenko out there trying to kick Cooch out there trying to kick ass. And I'll tell you, because America wants to do it. You think Sully and Jake and the Kachuk boys, you think they're scared? No. And it's not the players. It's the old men up in Canada. Just they're using some political, Russia's mean. We can't play Russia. It's absolute bullshit.
Yeah. And look through the history of sports. Countries have been at war and they still their sports teams play. That's supposed to be the thing that kind of puts things. I mean, for Christ's sake, we were in a Cold War with Russia and played them in the Olympics.
Right.
I don't want to get political, but just think if all the nations went against us every time we started some BS around the world, we wouldn't have been competing in anything.
No, that's right.
All we'd have was football tournaments with ourselves.
I'm a very proud American, but let's not act like we've never crossed some boundaries, metaphorically and literally, around the world when it comes to military action. Like, come on. I mean, it's completely embarrassing, and it screws everybody. It screws hockey fans. It screws the Russian players. It screws the tournament, even the World Championships that we just saw. Ovi and Gino would have been over there. You think that would have added some sizzle to the tournament? Of course it would have. If you don't like Russia, great. They're a great villain. That's the team you can root against. Sports need good villains too. Like, what am I missing here? It's completely embarrassing. It's arrogant is what it is for them to say, you know what, we don't view you as an appropriate country. You are not worthy to play here with us. Like, give me a break. It's completely
how much theater would that have been to have Sid, Gino, and Cooch against Flower?
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry. Ovi, Gino, and Cooch. Ovi and Gino versus Sid and Mac. I mean, it'd been incredible.
And especially with the timing of these Olympics, there's a good chance next season is Ovechkin's last. It probably is Malkin's last. This is a great generation of Russian players who haven't been able to play in the Olympics since 2014 because, the NHL guys weren't over there in 18 and COVID screwed everything up. So, I mean, is that really fair to those guys because of what their president decides to do from a military standpoint, it's insane. Nobody agrees with this.
But that's why Putin should come out and say, I dare you to come to Reykjavik. Because you know what? Then Trump would send the Kachuk boys and Sully and Snake. Then it would be the peer pressure for Canada to show up.
It would be
The
phenomenal.
Kachuk boys would wear military fatigues walking off with a plane in Iceland.
Yeah,
Like
It would be
Miami-
awesome is what it would be.
That's,
like
what,
Miami
that's what it
Hurricane.
should be. Leave the Swedes and the Finns at home. Bring Yagerland and let's have a four. What it's called for world domination. It'd be like the Road Warriors and Dusty and Nikita versus the Four Horsemen. Starcade. It'd be incredible. And Putin and Trump should get it done because it would be peer pressure to make Canada show up. They couldn't look that bad.
No.
That's right.
I don't know. Maybe they could. They're kind of showing their cards here a little bit. Like the old brass, they're showing that they're afraid that it's over. You know what I mean? Like we talked about it before during the Four Nations. Once that flips, once somebody, and it would most likely be the United States, unseats them and becomes the hockey power, it's over. And their national identity is on the line. You know what I mean? Like that's the big thing. Like you think about our country and it's like we have like a bunch of different national identities, like football, yeah, baseball for some people, there's a bunch of different things, but
basketball.
But Canada, you go up there and you can talk to anybody that, they don't even watch sports, but they're like, well, obviously I love the Leafs, like if they're in Toronto, like they were watching all the playoff games. So it's just a different animal. And I think they're like hanging on for dear life.
Send Tom Wilson, Canada, please.
Oh, wouldn't that be great
Send
to see
Tom Wilson for everybody's sake, so we don't have to hear about a bunch of pansies you are. You can't say the Kachuk. I know one guy can say the Kachuk, and that's Tom Wilson. I want to see it.
Yeah.
You
want to see it.
If not, just send the figure skating team.
Yeah. Before we move on to hear a little bit about the Penguins coaching search and any latest and greatest news there, Fleury, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this was the finale of his career, and Josh, your article talking about them in the Athletic was phenomenal. And I loved Fleury's response to you whenever, like I can almost hear it in his voice whenever you said how he was like going back and forth with the friends, and he said something like, "Oh, you are paying attention." Like, I could hear him being like, his self. He just seemed like he was having fun, and I wish he would have played in the last game, but
he was having so much fun, Corey. There was a practice I attended in Sweden a couple of weeks ago, and when Sid and Fleury were young, they would never leave the ice after practice. It would get to the point where those two in Letang, like Dan Bilesma, would literally have to go on the ice and say, "Hey, get the hell off the ice. That's enough. You're going to wear yourselves out." They would never leave. So after this practice in Sweden, Fleury and Sid wouldn't leave the ice. And they're the two oldest guys there. So all these young Canadian guys, you could tell they wanted to leave the ice, but they felt, I better not go to the locker room first. These two old guys are out here. So they just stayed on the ice for like an hour after practice, until finally this old Swedish attendant walks out to the glass, just bangs on the glass, and the Zamboni starts coming on the ice, which was his way of saying that'll be enough. So just to watch those two, and then I talked with Sid and Flower afterwards. And yeah, I mean, he was having the time of his life with Flower, and he made it very clear, he wanted to play with Sid one last time. And I wish I would have had a photographer with me. It was such a great scene. These two stools were sitting right by the rink. And Flower and Sid, they both knew I was going to interview them after practice. So Flower finally comes off the ice and he says, "Oh, I'm so goddamn tired." And he takes off his glove and he just sits on the stool. He says, "I will just sit here for the interview. I'm too tired." I said, "That's great." And so we're talking, and then Sid walks over and Sid just sits on the stool beside him. And they both like have their legs dangling off the stools, like looking like a couple of kids. It was just a great visual. You could see how much, like, they couldn't take the smiles off of their faces. They were having so much fun getting to play together one last time. So I'm grateful the Athletic sent me over there to write about it and to write about those two, because they have a real friendship, a real bond, and I've covered so many of their games together. It was so cool to get to do it again.
I will say, when it came across that Canada lost, it was erroneously said on some radio stations up north that Flower was in net, and my heart sunk. Then I was very happy to realize it was Bennington.
Right.
That
Don't
just
want
would have been
Fleury to go
awful.
out like that.
Right. And
Yeah.
Flower, by the way, played really well in that tournament. Now, he was outstanding. I told him, I said, Mark, you can still play. And he said, no, no, no. He said, it might look like it, but he said, when I wake up in the morning, I feel my age. I didn't used to. He said, I feel it now. I said, oh, I know what that's like. I said, I don't even play in the NHL, so I can totally comprehend. Flower at 40, he said, his body is finally starting to take a toll on him. Man, when you look at the career he put together, though, this is one of the great goalies of all time. And it was a fascinating career because it wasn't all roses. there were a couple of meltdowns. There were, he got yanked for Matt Murray. He got yanked for Robin Lehner. Then he got yanked in Minnesota. In the end, Gustafsson became the guy. It's kind of weird for a Hall of Fame goalie to be replaced as often as he was. But, man, you look at the body of work. That's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and we were lucky to have him here for a long time.
Oh, and there's many times even before Mr. Murray, just in the throes of mid-season or in the playoffs where he was not the most popular man in town.
No.
And I'm not going to sit here and I did defend him the whole time, though. I will say that I did defend him the whole time. And people in my family, and you know who you know who you are. One in Flower gone. And like I said at the time, I said, I understand the Murray thing, but, playing 60 and winning 40 is not the easiest thing to do.
No.
And I think it's been proven the last 7-8 years.
No, and let me say this. The Pittsburgh Penguins have never been the same since he left, both on the ice and in the locker room. They've never been the same.
Nope.
And obviously, I don't think anybody saw Murray's career unfolding the way it did after the 2 cups. So that was the single biggest problem. But Murray and Jarry both ultimately disappointing, and the Penguins not having any other answers in goal. I think a lot of people took for granted. You're right, Joe. The durability. The guy never got hurt. He would play 60 games a year, 65 a year. Not many people do that anymore. And the thing is, his level of play wouldn't drop. Like, we see some goalies can do it, but you can see they're out of gas at the end of the season. That was never really an issue for him. That was one of his greatest strengths, in fact. So I think in retrospect, a lot of people, maybe myself at times as well, took for granted just what he brought to the table every single day for so long.
Yeah. And I reading your article and thinking about it, it's the knee-jerk reaction. I wish he stayed. I wish Flower stayed with the Penguins forever. We would have won in 2018, all that kind of stuff. But then I started to think about it, and I was like, you know what? Because there was always that faction of fans that were like, get rid of Fleury the moment something went wrong. It's like, what are the odds that he ends on a Stanley Cup? And like, maybe that was the best time for him to leave Pittsburgh. Nobody wanted it to be over, but he left, and everybody, universally loves him from forever. And how could you not? Because he's such a likable guy.
And what screwed the Penguins, guys, was just that there happened to be an expansion draft right at that time. Because if they ultimately had to decide on keeping one and they decided to keep Murray, what could you have gotten for Fleury in a trade? That would have made a very significant difference.
But I think Corey made a great point there. Was, before his moving to Vegas, his kind of national persona was he choked in the World Juniors or something like that. That was he was known for in Canada, which we all know is what means everything in the hockey world. And he won cups, but he won. His first cup was with a great team, and he kind of was the backup on 2 other cups. So he wasn't exactly on the road to Young Street. But then what he did after that is kind of what really propelled him into the national zeitgeist of one of the greatest goaltenders ever. Even though he had the stats, there'd always be, your other reporters and the people in Toronto be like, well, what he did in World Juniors 25 years ago and this and that. But after what he did in Vegas and just the way he conducted himself, he could be seen more on a national level for his greatness as a person and in net.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And taking an expansion team to the Stanley Cup final, that's what solidified him as a Hall of Famer, really. I think he probably needed that for his career. Now he would go on in terms of longevity, and he finally got a Vezina, so he would have been a Hall of Famer without that season. But that season's what truly made him a star, I think, from the national perspective.
Hey, ask Ron Francis how hard it is to have a goaltender take a team to a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah. So,
Sorry,
well,
Ronnie.
bid adieu to Fleury, and then we'll get into we want to have a couple people putting comments in here saying, they want to hear about the coaching. They want to hear about the coaching search. So we will get into the coaching search. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about Mr. Bill Neofis of Neofis Insurance. And I wonder how he felt about Team USA winning the World.
Bill's a proud American. He enjoyed it, no doubt. Bill, in fact, I haven't talked to him in a couple of days. I assure you he's not happy about the Edmonton Oilers being up 2-1. He enjoys seeing his All-American Stanley Cup finals. Excuse me. He is happy the Capitals are out, of course. He has his little checklist of teams he wants to see eliminated. I think as many Pittsburghers do. Yeah, he's certainly hoping that the Dallas Stars have a comeback. But anyway, for those who don't know, if you're new to the program, our great sponsor is Bill Neofis, who is the head of Neofis Insurance, which is very conveniently located, I might add, in the North Hills of Pittsburgh. Give our guy Bill a call, 412-364-3388, or go to Neofis Insurance. That's NEOFES insurance.com. They will take care of all of your insurance needs. It actually doesn't matter. Whatever insurance you can conceive of, they provide, and they give you very fair rates, and they will talk you through everything that you may have a question for, which in the case of myself, I'm an ignorant idiot when it comes to insurance. So I always have questions for Bill and his people, and they always have answers. And usually the answers aren't as bad as I was anticipating. So give Bill a call. Give the number one more time, 412-364-3388. He is the best.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. And for, what everybody's waiting to hear, and I'm sure Mr. Neofis as well, what is going on with the Penguins coaching search? I posted Marcy's comment up that she wanted to know who is on the really short list for coach, and will a decision be made by June 1st? Because Kyle did kind of indicate to you that he wanted to have this done sooner rather than later in June.
He did. That's my my high school classmate, Marcy, by the way, class of '98, Peters Township. I like that she chimed in. Yeah, so here's the deal. Kyle got back home from Sweden a few days earlier than expected. He was actually planning if they had made the gold medal game, which most people assume they would, he was actually going to be on a flight home to Pittsburgh today as we speak. He is home already. So what that means is that this is the week where he is having people in Pittsburgh for second interviews. He would like to have a decision made by the end of this week. In fact, he even told me June 1st is the day that he really wants this to be wrapped up, and that wants presumably the announcement to be made. So because things are a little earlier than expected, it could happen this week. There's a very real chance by the end of this week we will know who the coach is. Things have been very tight-lipped about who the candidates are and who the final candidates are. We've talked a lot about Mitch Love, and he is a guy that I expect to be in Pittsburgh this week for a second interview. The Capitals assistant has impressed a lot of people around the league in his interviews. I know Kyle Dubas likes him a lot, and I know he's very impressed with the way the Capitals have rebuilt, and I think a lot of people around the league think Mitch has a lot to do with that. So he will be considered. Another name that we haven't really discussed that I know the Penguins like. This is somebody Joe might have a bipolar relationship with this person because he was once the coach of the Ottawa Senators, but he's also an assistant coach for the LA Kings. The Misters team is DJ Smith, who's a guy that I think the Penguins are definitely interested in. And Drew Bannister is another guy, former coach of the St. Louis Blues. I know they like it. And obviously there are others, but those are the three names that I've heard a good bit from people I know in the organization.
You scared me there, Josh. I thought you were going to say the crooked Guy Boucher.
No.
I'm like, no, I don't want him at all. Well, and I guess Elaine Nazardine is off the table. We were kind of trying to float him around. I know trying to push a little bit because I think he'd be a great choice, and he's still doing business. A very, 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 very respected man. One of the only guy I trust as much as you, Josh, said that the man from Washington is coming in for a second interview.
Yeah.
So, of those choices, I don't know. Bannister didn't really blow my doors away. DJ didn't blow my doors away. I'd give the guy from Washington a chance over those guys, but I'm not in the interview process myself. Corey, what do you think?
I'd go with Mitch, but I wanted to ask you guys, because I think he looks like a good coach. He looks like a guy who can help the young guys along. Also looks like somebody that, from what I've read, which is, all Josh's stuff. So from what I've read from Josh, it sounds like he's a guy that would work well with the veterans. But is it going to be a quick fix? Like we talked about, even if Sullivan stayed, like they probably might not be that good again next year. So, everybody's going to go, oh, Mitch Love, he's going to turn around like the Washington Capitals. And I kind of want to pump the brakes for the fans and be like, let's not get our expectations out of control for next year.
I would like to speak. I mean, Josh is the professional on this show, obviously, and I'm the fans' perspective on the show, the rabid fans' perspective on this show. And I got less worried about this whole situation when he interviewed Sid, and Sid said, I just want to win. I don't care who the coach is. So as long as Sid's happy, I can be happy with whoever it is. Does that make sense?
It does. And Sid made it very clear he doesn't want any say. He doesn't want any influence. He just wants to know who his coach is. But I'm sure Sid's phone is going to ring at some point this week, and it's going to be Kyle Dubas on the other line. And he's going to talk about it with him, I'm sure. So of those three names that we have discussed, I do think Mitch Love probably makes the most sense. I know from talking with people around the league, he is a really highly regarded guy. There are other candidates out there that I like just from afar. Like I was thinking about a guy like Manny Malhotra, who's been the AHL coach in Vancouver for a long time. Obviously, former NHL player, very respected guy like that. There are names out there that would make a lot of sense. But Love seems to be the guy with the most momentum, I think, in the minds of the fans. And I can tell you, just very briefly talking with Kyle Dubas in Sweden, I just brought up his name, and he said, yeah. He goes, yeah, he's impressive. Like, yeah, he's a candidate. Of course he is. Sure. He's a guy that would make a lot of sense. I don't think you're going to get a big veteran name, a guy who's coached a lot of different teams. And Kyle will tell you, we're not quite there yet. We're not ready for, Mike Sullivan or a Joel Quenneville, a guy like that with that Stanley Cup experience. He wants somebody who can work with the younger guys. Doesn't mean they're going to stink for the next 5 years or that's the plan. But I think for where they are right now, I think that makes the most sense to Dubas. But Love is a guy who, even though I think he's only 40 and he's worked with young players, but I think there's a credibility there, having worked with Washington and what they've done. And this was a guy who was a real no-nonsense, tough guy as a player. And I think he brings some of that to his coaching, and I think these Penguins need that.
1,000%.
A quick question. What about Mitch Love? Let's say, it could be anybody. But, Mitch Love could walk in the locker room, and maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but he could walk in the locker room and look at Chris Letang and say, hey, Chris, you haven't won me anything. Get with the program or your minutes go down. Because as much as Sullivan is a hard ass, he, there's got to be something of whenever like you owe something to a player. Like Chris really was a massive part of that 2016 Stanley Cup.
Well, Mike Sullivan might be a hard ass, but I don't think he was ever a hard ass with Chris Letang or Evgeny Malkin. How many shifts did they ever miss because of all their screw ups? I don't think he ever benched them even for a shift that I recall. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, but I think it was really important for Sullivan to develop a good relationship with them when they were in their primes. But I don't think he ever changed the way he treated them. And that probably wasn't a good thing in the end. Whereas, a new coach can come in, and a new coach is going to love Sid because he's Sid and he does everything right. But Karlsson, Letang, Malkin, all the mistakes we see those three make all the time, that's not going to go over well with a new coach. And I mean, that's one of the touchy things about this job. You still have to deal with those guys and try to get the best out of them. There's a lot of bad ingrained habits in their games. And that's a tough thing.
In Sullivan's defense, the only coach I've seen since Keenan that was effective benching anybody was Cooper.
Yeah.
Who did he
Sure.
bench?
He bet
Cooch.
Cooch.
Oh, when was that? When was that?
Oh, 3 or 4 times. I
No,
think
he's
once
done it
this
before.
year.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's had him for a whole period this year, I think, when he didn't like
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
But he did a couple times, even before they even won Stanley Cups together, when it was tricky. He did it. I mean, like I said, other than Keenan, because I don't count Tortorella's clown show, what he does. Of the real coaches and the successful ones, the only time I've ever seen anybody bench that worked out for was Cooper.
No, it's true. It's a tough thing to do. And that's the thing we talk about, the Penguins wanting a coach who works well with young players. It makes complete sense. You got McGroarty and Koivunen, and you've got all these other, Harrison Brunick, all these young kids are on their way up. But you still have these veterans making an enormous amount of money on your roster, and they have a lot of influence. And of course, we're talking about Letang and Carlson and Malkin. And I know everyone says, well, they don't matter anymore. The future's what matters. Well, that might be true, but those guys are still on the roster, and they still have an awful lot of clout in that locker room. So you want them on your side, but to get them on your side, you got to be hard on them. And what I mean is, if you're just going to be easy on those guys, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. So there's a very fine line between how hard you can be without losing them. I don't know. It's a really, really tough job, especially for the next season, right? Because after this season, Malkin's probably gone. Maybe by then you can trade Carlson. Who knows? But for right now, it's still a really hard team to coach, in my view.
I think it would be, if I could give Mitch Love advice, or if I could even interview for the job, I'd walk into Kyle's office and I'd say, I will do whatever it takes to bench Letang, or to get him to either play the right way or ask for a trade out of here. That might get Dubas might be like, sold, whatever it takes there.
And one thing about Love too that I would bring up, I know this whole season has been nothing but kissing Ovi's ass by the media, and I get it. He just became the all-time goal king. I promise you, he's not easy to coach, and I promise you that Carberry had his issues when he first went to Washington, because when a guy is of that stature, he has the power. Ovechkin has the power in Washington. As great as he was this year, he's not the player he was 10 years ago, right? So that can be a very tricky thing, figuring out, well, this guy wants his power play time, so I'm going to give it to him. But he's not really as good as he was in this, even strength anymore, so I'm going to reduce some of his minutes, and hopefully he doesn't get pissed, because if he gets pissed, that's a problem for me. There's all these things that people don't consider that you have to deal with when you're dealing with all-time great players who have egos. And he saw Carberry do it, and he was a part of that himself, I think. And that might be a very beneficial thing, I would think, if he were to get this job.
I'm going to take nothing away from Carberry, excuse me, but I give a lot of credit to Alexander Ovechkin.
Oh, sure.
For absolutely putting the team first before that record. He had more assists this year than I've ever seen him have assists.
He did.
He was playing defense. I've never even seen him on his side of the red line before. I mean, I thought he bought in completely.
He did, but I'm telling you, I don't think he does that. If he doesn't respect the coach, I don't think he does that, and that's a critical.
No, 1,000%. But I mean, it was his demise, because I think if he would have just lollygagged, he would have had more energy in the playoffs.
Could be.
Like I said, I marveled at Ovi this year, and I thought I don't know if he took lessons from Sid, but I thought he handled everything pretty much beautifully.
He did. No doubt.
Not the way 09 Ovechkin would have done it.
Probably not.
Back in 09, he handled things a lot differently.
I think so too. But I think the Penguins want to be where the Capitals are right now. And obviously the Capitals, they've had the advantage of LTIR, with Oshie and Backstrom. That helped them a lot. But look at where they are, the way they've rebounded with all these great young players they have now. The Penguins want to get there. And the fact that Love has played a big role in their success, I think that makes him very attractive to them.
Even if they didn't even use the money, Josh, it's just that those guys weren't there. Now, obviously, TJ Oshie is a better leader than Erik Karlsson, but but he wasn't there. So whatever. If you think the kids, like, they lean on Oshie, they rely on Oshie, they look to Oshie, he's not there, so they had to step up and grow up themselves.
That's right.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. We could. I have a feeling next week's episode is going to be talking about a new coach. If I had to put my money on it, let's get into the NHL playoffs. Though we got the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals underway, and in the Oilers and the Stars, the series that I think everybody had circled. I really thought, I mean, game one, I'm like, yep, here we go. Dallas is a wagon. Nobody's stopping this train. They lose game two, and it's like, oh, that's okay. It's going to be a long series. I did not get to watch a lot of the game yesterday, but I watched the highlights, and the 6-1. I don't know. Was it really that dominant shift in and shift out?
In the first period and the third period, it was all Edmonton. In the second period, Dallas really gave a push, and Leonard Skinner, to his credit, played well.
Oh, he was really good. I think, though, of the 4 teams remaining, and we're going to get to the other series because we have to at some point. We kind of could see that coming in the East. I think in some ways Dallas has been the most disappointing of the 4 teams so far in the conference final. Given what they did in the first 2 rounds, who they beat, to come back and beat Colorado and to beat Winnipeg pretty convincingly the way they did, I didn't expect this. They were steamrolled for the most part the last 2 games. And let's be honest, they had to pull off quite a comeback to win game 1. This isn't what I was expecting at all. I think Dallas's big names have disappointed so far in this series. McDavid certainly made his mark with his performance in game 3. I picked Dallas to win the series. I'm not feeling real good about it right now. Through 9 periods, there's no question Edmonton's been the better team in about 7 of those periods.
Without question. And I'll tell you, we've talked about the Yager moments. We've talked about Mario's moments. We've talked about other people's moments. Jesus had a moment in game 3. That was a clinic. There's no, I mean, that was the best player in the world right there. What he did, it's going to be 2-1. This team's just trying to get to the buzzer, trying to get in the regroup. No. I'm just going to score, and we can go have a nice Gatorade at the intermission, And then he came out in the third period and was just dominant. Jesus. It was funny. Somebody, I think it was Elliot, said that everyone remembers the shot of Jesus and Leon just sitting on the bench after game 1. Just kind of like how you said when you said how Sid and Gino had a look one time like this is not going to happen again to us. It was kind of like the look that Leon and Jesus had, like, oh, we're not going down like this tomorrow.
Yeah,
and they really have just absolutely put it on Dallas.
No, they have. Yeah, the story you're referencing, that was before Game 6 in Tampa in 2016. When I saw them sitting together in the locker room, I thought, oh, boy, I wish I was in Vegas right now. I think I know who's going to win tonight. No, you're right. This is starting to feel like this whole spring. It's like we've talked about everything else in these playoffs. I feel like Edmonton's actually been under the radar a little bit for a lot of this post. We've talked so much about Dallas and that great Dallas-Colorado series and all the other the wild stuff in the East with the Toronto and Florida and everything. But I feel like the best player in the world's been under the radar a little bit. And this is starting to feel like maybe this is his time. I don't know. He still has to win 6 more games, and it won't be easy. But they look like a buzzsaw, and it's not just him. Like, all of a sudden, they look like a complete team. Like, against Vegas, Draisaitl and McDavid, they didn't go off. They were relatively held in check. But now you see their third and fourth lines contributing, and their overall team defense has been better. Skinner really good all of a sudden. They are the X factor of these playoffs. So they're just different. You can outplay them and not beat them because of those 2 guys. Okay. Yeah. And McDavid is, he just has a way of elevating his game in the postseason. He's frightening right now. So if I'm Dallas, you better win game 4 in Edmonton, because if you fall down 3-1 against that team, you're done. You're not in 3 straight. And if you're Florida, and we'll get to them in a second, you hope Dallas finds a way to at least extend this series a little bit and wear Edmonton out, because the Oilers, they look like a very frightening hockey team at the moment.
Yeah, I if you would have told me that the bottom of their lineup and their goaltending would be playing like this at the beginning of the playoffs, I would have probably picked them to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
It was the bottom of their lineup and their goaltending is why I picked them to lose every series to this point. Because I was like, well, they stink. Like I've crapped on them repeatedly, and then every game I go, I go back and check the box score. I'm like, oh crap. It was all those guys I was crapping on that are doing the damage. So, I'm not saying McDavid has plenty of time to, even ramp it up to another level, but like we haven't even seen him personally. I don't think, like you said, maybe the last game was his best, like where he's reaching his peak and he's going to kind of have a new cruising altitude, but he hasn't been the guy like carrying them. It's been all the role players. It's really incredible to see.
Well, that's what was kind of scary from the perspective, for Dallas's perspective, was they really took it to Vegas, and Jesus and Leon didn't even really play that well. They played good. They didn't play bad, but they didn't play great. and
they weren't putting up 3 points a game or anything. No.
Yeah. So now you're looking at like, the underlings, if you will, the Canes and the Perrys and the Hyman's a wrecking machine, and even the Nuge is scoring goals. Then all of a sudden, well, now Leon and Jesus, playing and Bouchard's back to scoring goals. It's from the Dallas perspective. I mean, I never thought that they would just go. I mean, how can Granlund be your best player? I mean, you're not winning anything. I'm not trying to knock the guy. Lord knows I have for 4 years, but I mean, he played great. But I mean, Rantanen, ice. Passing the kid, Jason Robertson, ice. Ben, ice. Sagan scored one? Duchesne has one. And now, I mean, arguably not arguably, their best center, their leader, Evgeny Malkin Light is injured. Hence, and that was cheap. I mean, that wasn't,
Adam Graves, but
yeah, exactly. Adam Graves cheap, but it was in the ballpark.
Yeah, I didn't like that hit at all, actually. And I know the Stars didn't either. But yeah, their best players have been disappointing. Like, and Rantanen, he went on that incredible run at the end of the Colorado series and early against Winnipeg, where he looked like the best player on the planet. But then he goes quiet. Like, you can't be that streaky if you're in his position. They need him to put up numbers, especially in this series. Like, I don't care how good you are defensively or how good Ottinger is. Like, you're not going to shut down Edmonton. You're going to have to score some to beat them, which means your best players have to capitalize. And Robertson's been really disappointing to me. Like, I'm not even noticing him in these games.
And how is Wyatt Johnson like minus 18?
I know.
He's like playing the Greater Tulsa Open. Like, what is that? I mean, minus 8. It's like they haven't even played that many games.
No, that's what I mean. These are their best players, and they need to be better. We always talk about Dallas and how they're the deepest team, and they are. And they're really well coached, and they're big, and they're good defensively. They do a lot of great things. Your best players still have to produce on this stage, especially against that team, because you're not going to shut them down. So I think we will learn everything we need to know about the Dallas Stars in Game 4. If they go there and win in Game 4, there's still a real chance they can win the series because of how great they are on home ice. Like, they're hard to beat in that building. Like, if they win tomorrow night, I think there's a good chance the series goes 7. But they're in trouble because I just don't think there's any question that Edmonton's been the better team, and Edmonton's no easy team to beat in their home building either. You better believe that.
Yeah, just stop taking stupid penalties, Perry and Kane. I mean, really, if they didn't go on a stupid, like, hey, offensive, high-sticking penalties. I mean, is there anything dumber in sports or in hockey, at least?
It's up there.
Yeah. It's the and I'm going to tell you something right now, Mr. Hollerback. I don't care if Ottinger gives up 10 goals the next 3 games. I don't want you as my Olympic goaltender. Okay?
That was my biggest fear.
Did you hear me?
I was like, oh no, now they're going to put Hollerback back in. I hope Sully wasn't watching yesterday.
That's a very fair point.
And speaking of Rantanen, with the other series, I saw somebody quote online. I should probably start bookmarking these so I can give proper due. But somebody said, God, no wonder Rantanen won it out of Carolina. Because the Carolina and Cats series, Carolina, that's embarrassing. That's where they've lost 15 straight conference final games.
Dating back to Gino Machino.
Exactly. Yeah. They have not Matt Cullen days when Matt Cullen was posterized by Gino.
Well, you know what? At least I think Brindamore will realize this was a sweep.
That's right.
I've made jokes for years. I'm like, I'm not good at math, but it's a sweep. 4-0 is a sweep now. It's like there's no doubt about it. And thank God it looks like Reinhardt is not mortally injured, because that was just dirty.
Oh,
and I mean, and that literally just goes to prove that regular season Rod has no idea how to win a playoff game against a team, against a better opponent, really, because to go out there and try to play physical hockey against the Florida Panthers, it's a fool's errand. You're never getting. And what I love the best is they wait till they're up like 6-1, and then they just start settling scores.
Florida is my favorite team to watch right now because a hockey, I won't say who it was, but someone in the Penguins organization texted me late in that game and said Florida plays the game exactly the way it's supposed to be played. And you're right, they got the big lead. Then okay, who took a cheap shot at us? We're going after you. And guess what? I love watching Tkachuk. Like, after every whistle in the third period when they have a big lead, he just picks a fight after every whistle. It's hilarious to me. And you're right, Joe. Carolina skates really well. They're a really good defensive team. They're a swarming team. That's what they should be focusing on. Instead, I see people like throwing cheap shots. Carolina's probably been guilty of more cheap shots than the Panthers in this series. That's not the team you want to pick a fight with. It's not going to end well for you. It plays right into what they want. They're bigger than you. They're meaner than you. Yeah, they're more talented too. It's just, no, Brindamore has completely lost control of that team. Paul Maurice is having his way with him in this series. I'd be shocked if Florida doesn't end it in game 4. This series is way over. Talk about a team being overmatched. I mean, this has been the worst conference final in ages. Just a terrible series, and that's no knock on Florida. I give them all the credit in the world, but they're just in a different league than Carolina.
Yeah, it's literally the JV versus the varsity.
Yeah,
I mean, and then they tried to run, and they tried to run Bobrovsky, which was just stupid. But the other thing that I thought was really just dumb was now I'm losing my point. I apologize. But I will say this though, which maybe because I've just watched too many Penguin games, but not only do they have the talent to score, not only are they big and mean and physical, when they're in their own zone, every man is in the right position, and every man has a guy and has a body on him. Even when the Canes were swirling, everyone had a body on them, and everyone's in the right position. It was literally, you run the video, Maurice. Teach it in hockey schools all summer. You wouldn't see a better defensive team.
No, you're right, Joe.
Really, Josh, it's like amazing how they play defense.
I know. That's the thing about them. They can beat you so many different ways. We always say that. You got Bobrovsky, who's heated up. He's a Hall of Fame goalie, so he can always steal a game. And you've got the Rat on their third line, for God's sake, with Lundell. I mean, that's such I don't even like calling it their third line. You have all this depth up front. They can score. But what makes them truly special is they are just so damn hard to score against. And look at how good they are in their zone. Their defensemen are all big trees who are just so well schooled, who can skate. You got Barkov and Reinhardt, might be the two best defensive forwards in the game right now, and Marchand's right there too. So you've got 3 different guys who are forwards who are that good defensively. That takes a toll. Star players don't like playing against guys like that. That drives them nuts when they know they have to deal with defensemen already, but they've got the other forwards on the ice who are that aware defensively. And that's what Florida does. That's why they're so hard to beat. At the end of the day, it's just hard to put up more than 2 goals a game against them. That's the reality.
But you never see anybody free in the slot. Even when they circle in, okay, it's back to the point. Someone's cutting through. There's a body on them. Like, there's no one free in the offensive zone. There's guys in every shooting. The slot's full. There's no Bobrovsky's always has people in front of him to block shots and just get in the way and cause traffic.
Mhm.
It's amazing. And I'll pat myself on the back. I said last week, there's no way Freddie Anderson's going to last another series. He's not.
No.
Right. Yeah, he's not that guy. And Paul Maurice, he's the best coach in the game right now, in my opinion. And one thing about Florida, as great as they are defensively, like there's a simplicity to how they play. Like they don't try to reinvent the wheel. When I was down there for the first round series, I asked Maurice about dealing with Kucherov and what a unique player he is. Just the way he can see the ice on the power play and the way he passes the puck is different than other players. And I asked him how it affected his game plan. And he said, well, you're talking about outliers. He said, you're talking about like McDavid's speed or Crosby on the backhand, things that are just different. I said, yeah. And Maurice said, yeah, we respect all that. And we know how great those guys are, but we don't change what we do. Yeah, we simply are try to be positionally perfect and we defend. Like we don't try to, overthink things very much. The game's not that complicated. When you're dealing with great players, yes, they require more attention. But basically it's about us and how we play defense and just how they've been built. And they are impressive. And if they get the sweep, guys, they're going to get more than a week off. That's not always a good thing. We saw with the Penguins over the years, that can be a bad thing. But given how much hockey Florida has played, I actually think it's a good thing for them to get that time off, for them to be fresh, whether they're going toe-to-toe with Dallas in a heavyweight fight or if they're trying to keep up with McDavid. Either way, I think that rest will do them a lot of good.
Yes. And it was funny. The great Jackie Redmond was interviewing Maurice, and something along the lines of, what do you think of all the confusion in front of the net? And he's like, that's what we're looking for. Causing confusion. And puck will go in literally like 2 minutes later. Puck off a skate in the back of the net. Like it was beautiful. And I mean, Jackie Redmond does such a great job, and the lady from ESPN does such a great job too. I got to say,
Emily Kaplan.
Emily Kaplan. I think in most situations, and almost especially in football and in basketball, the little basketball I watch, and then the other hockey side reporters, we know their names. Most of them are awful. I think those two do an incredible job and always add something and ask questions that I want answered.
Yes. No, I agree. That's a great point. They are both outstanding, and especially when Paul Maurice is behind the bench, he always gives such interesting answers. Anyway, I love it when it's those two asking him questions, because he'll just break things down for you right in the middle of the game. Like there's a transparency there.
Yeah. Emily was great. I like Emily Kaplan. She does a great job, and she's had some. I mean, it seems like Jackie comes in for the big dogs, the playoffs, but Emily's had some. I watch every game, so she's had some horrible regular season matchups on ABC. It's like, at least we don't have to hear Messier, talking in intermissions. Like, oh my god.
Yeah. No, I
how bad is virtual PK Subban, that segment? Oh my god.
I turn it off. I can't handle PK.
I just have the sound down, but you can just see how awful it is.
Do you remember whenever the All-Star game was in Nashville and he did like a Tonight Show type thing?
Yes.
And I remember I was like, I'll give this a shot. And I watched it and I was like, boy, oh boy, I think he's going to be the guy I can't stand on TV after his career's over.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a little too much,
I'll tell you what, though. I actually like Subban. I don't know him personally, but the couple times he's been there and Messier wasn't there and he actually talked hockey, I thought he broke it down incredibly. And I think if he was on TNT, I think he would be great. And I love Steve Levy, and I like Buchagras. His work I'm not as happy with. Steve Levy is like the best in the business, but Messier, that show was just terrible.
It
can't get any worse.
And I can tell, I've dealt with PK a lot over the years in his playing career. I actually like him a lot. He's a really likable, charismatic guy. Yeah. And he's smart and he knows the game. You might be onto something there, but in general, I still prefer the TNT product much more than ESPN.
Absolutely, but just the whole thing. We're going to do this, and we're going to dress PK up. We're making him do a visual this. And he's like emoji. It's like, just talk about hockey.
Yeah. Right. That's exactly. That's what we want.
It's like
for the playoffs are compelling theater. We don't need to add. That's
Before I think I mentioned it before on the show, but before they made this ESPN TNT deal where you have to watch all the games through that, I used to use certain technical ways to watch the Canadian broadcast, because if you could subscribe to the NHL package and use VPN, then I could watch on my Apple TV. I could watch any broadcast I wanted. And so for the all the Penguins Stanley Cups, everything from like 2014 all the way to like 22, I watched the Canadian broadcasts. And what do they do at intermission? They go in and they talk hockey.
Here's Elliot Friedman talking hockey. It's very simple. Yes.
And it's thrilling and invigorating. And I wanted to ask you guys, because the ratings are down, so obviously the Four Nations face-off bump, and that might have something to do with the Canes and and who's in it. But I feel like the U.S. broadcast is pretty awful in general. First of all, they were using remote broadcasters, which was horrific.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because Mearsy kind of got caught up in the crosshairs. He called the Edmonton Oilers game on TNT whenever I think McDavid won it in overtime. Yeah. And, people were, awful announcing on Twitter was all over it. And it's not Mearsy's fault. He wasn't the one that chose to be in a studio in Atlanta broadcasting the game. But that's terrible. And then also Canada mixes in the crowd noise a lot better. Like, it's just the broadcasters for the most part are off. Sean McDonough, I don't know how I feel about it. And plus him being like, it's off the crossbar. Like, it's like, come on, dude, how many times you gonna miss something like that? Is there something about the U.S. broadcast that's bringing down the product to the NHL fan or to the average fan that is trying to tune in?
The Canadian broadcast has always been better. I first started covering the Penguins in 2009, and one of my favorite things about road trips in Canada, I had access to watching Hockey Night in Canada or games on Sportsnet. Everything about the broadcast is better. The production, the sound quality, the broadcast talent, the intermission programming, everything. It was so much better. And I still think NBC was awful for hockey. I really did not enjoy that, other than Doc Emmerich. I like Doc and Edzo. Other than that, I didn't like a whole lot about the NBC broadcast. TNT, I think, has been a little better. But in general, I think they have always struggled to bring hockey to the American public. And honestly, I think they try too hard sometimes to talk down to people who maybe are new to hockey. Just talk hockey. Like let's the people who understand the game will appreciate that. Everyone else will catch on. I think it's been an issue for a while. And as for the ratings, so much of that is you got 3 Southern markets. Sorry, that's always going to be in a Canadian market, even though they have the best player in the world in Edmonton. ESPN and TNT could not have asked for a worse Final Four in terms of TV ratings. This is not exactly New York and Boston and Pittsburgh and Chicago, or it just isn't, and it was always going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think that I was so horrified by NBC's coverage, sans Doc and Edzo, that I think this is like Jim McKay and ABC winning Emmys.
Right.
Because I just think that, and Liam McHugh did a great job, but I think having now he's with the Evil Empire, but I actually thought Keith Jones did a great job in studio. But having that clown's ass Milbury talking about hockey and bringing it making Don Cherry look like Stephen Hawking as far as genius, I think that really buffooned up hockey when it didn't need to be. When you had OV and Sid and the great Penguins teams and the great Blackhawks teams, and Detroit still playing, the Detroit dynasty, the Kings, and just him out there, just blah blah blah, just like the moron that he is. I thought it was a tragedy, and I will say this, and I will die on this cross. I think having Pierre Maguire on the broadcast ruined the broadcast in America. I think nobody, if I don't want to hear the minutia, do you think the regular person in America wants to hear his bullshit
about where the kid came from and his
everything, his fake French accent, Every single thing about him in the broadcast was garbage.
Yeah,
So everything's better than that. But I think in the playoffs now, that is down to McDonough and Chicken Parm, and then and over on TNT, it's Edzo with Albert, and sometimes Edzo with Forsland. I think that's great. I think in the regular seasons, hey, I'm all for women playing hockey, but don't force us, because most of those women colors are terrible. They're not the lady. The lady, I love the lady who works for the Islanders. She's on a lot, and I'm trying to Google her name because I love her. And I always forget her name, but I'm trying to give her credit. But all those Olympic chicks, they're terrible.
Well, ESPN just doesn't have the depth, I think, with broadcast. And if you watch ESPN, you know that they don't really care about hockey that much. No. You watch all the morning programming, it doesn't even get a mention. They're talking Aaron Rodgers and the Knicks every day, all day. They just don't care about hockey that much, even though they have it at ESPN. And I just think it shows with the overall presentation.
Her name is AJ Malesko.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Yeah.
She's great. She adds to the broadcast. To me, a lot of the other Olympic champion ladies, they just say what, my girlfriend could say. Doesn't add anything to the broadcast.
No, and I like TNT a lot better. And across the board, TNT's just a better product, I think. Sometimes I wish that one of the networks just had the majority of the game, so we weren't flipping back and forth every day. And I wish there was some consistency. I know it's never going to go back to that. Even the NBA's back and forth, TNT and ESPN every day. But there certainly is still room for improvement in the way I think hockey is brought to the American public. But this is not, these are not classic hockey cities. And so it was never going to be a bonanza for TV ratings one way or the other.
This is turning me into an old man yells at the clouds. But I said to my wife the other day, and I mean, for those of you know, I'm firmly a millennial. I'm 39 years old. So I like technology. And I said to her, boy, I wish there was a way that you could watch TV and you could just type in the number of what you wanted to watch and it went to that channel. And then you could hit the previous button and it would go back to that channel. Cause I'm like, why, especially when the two games were going on, one on ESPN, one on HBO, I'd have to hit the home button, go over to that app. That app load the HBO app. That app loads. Then I have to go find the program, click it. Do you want to watch live? Yes. Then it starts, and I'm like, gee, maybe cable was better. Maybe we were in better shape then.
Oh, we were. This is very nitpicky, but I don't like how TNT does not show us the healthy scratches. ESPN, after they show all the lines, they show the healthy scratches.
I never noticed that, but
this is really nitpicky. Why can't they do that at the beginning of every period? Show the lines.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good idea, Joe. I like that.
Especially if it gets jumbled around. It gets jumbled around during the game. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but even just just to see, again, it's like, is it really did the kid in charge of hitting that button go home after the first period? I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be that hard to do.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. That's just, and I just don't like ESPN's overall play-by-play guys. They're okay. It's not the days of Gary Thorne and Bill Clement, though. Maybe that's aging myself a little bit, but I don't know. Something was a little different when Gary Thorne was on the call. I miss those days.
Well, I'll age myself even more. It's not the day of Jiggs McDonald and JD.
Oh, right.
The Buccigross, I love him for many reasons, but he's not a play-by-play guy.
I love him as a studio host.
Yeah, he's fantastic. That I wish, Joe, I think you mentioned many times, why don't they flip Levy and Buccigross?
Yes.
But yeah, it's just they leave something to be desired. And I'm telling you, if you listen, somebody finally pointed it out on Twitter, and I was so glad they put an Edmonton overtime goal in Edmonton in the ESPN broadcast and then the Canadian broadcast. And the Canadian broadcast mixes in the crowd noise so much more, and you could hear that pop. And it's like, and instead on the Canadian one or on the ESPN one, you hear like this subdued noise in the background of the crowd, and over it you hear Sean McDonough going, "Oh!" Like that's just like that's not what we tune in for. Like, come on,
right? Even the Canadian broadcast, you can like one of the great things about hockey is the familiar sounds that those of us who love hockey, we all the puck hitting off the glass or bodies going into the boards. Like you just hear that more in the Canadian broadcast. You absolutely do. I don't know if they spend more money on microphones or what. I from a technological standpoint, I have no idea what it is they do differently. But you feel like you're there when you're watching a game on Hockey Night in Canada. You don't feel like that on ESPN.
Well, you know what it is too. Like there's a lack of depth at ESPN. There's only so many Rangers that want to do broadcasting.
That's their problem. It's true. It's true. There's no
They only
question.
hire Rangers. That's all they hire is Rangers.
There's no question which team ESPN loves the most. That has been made very clear over time.
Yeah,
No question.
And they used to have a little affiliation with the Hurricanes because a lot of them were Hartford Whalers fans back in the day, but in the brass bonanza days.
I have one more thing to say about that is well, first of all, I mean, can they just talk about? I mean, and that because they throw Messi. Messi is great, but they throw him up with Gordy and Mario and Gretzky. Wait, you're not in the Holy Trinity, buddy.
Right.
I know you called your shot for the Rangers, and it was like it was as crazy as America winning the Worlds, the Rangers winning a cup. I understand, but enough. But Mr. Gretzky has not donned the TNT this winter, has he?
No,
in the playoffs, right?
Much, has he?
He hasn't been in the playoffs.
He shows up randomly in teams' locker rooms for no particular reason from time to time. I actually saw him in I think he lives in Florida. I actually saw him he was outside the Lightning locker room in the first round when they were playing the Panthers. So
but
he's
around.
But
he hasn't been on the desk. It was great seeing. It was so funny because I remember years ago, like the ESPN had Chelios and Hall. And it was great. Those guys didn't give a damn about who they threw under the bus. And it was fantastic. And it lasted like one season. And that was it. I don't know if they just had better things to do with their time. They probably did.
Yeah.
But it was just such great stuff just hearing Chelios and Holly just ripping on everybody.
Oh, yeah.
You know who I'd love to see, though, is JR. Even though the great meme of him, of Jeremy Roenick crying on TV because his former team beat his other former team to win a trophy that he never won whenever he cried because the Blackhawks beat the Flyers. I love that meme of him, but I really did enjoy. He was maybe one of the bright spots at NBC.
He was great. He was great on NBC.
Yeah. But well, that'll do it for this week. Guys, I really hope we see a Penguin coaching announcement between now and next week.
I think we will.
I have a good feeling Josh will be making his way up to Cranberry for an introductory press conference. But guys, follow us on YouTube. If you subscribe, you'll get notified the moment we go live. So make sure you smash that like button or whatever they say, all the YouTubers say. And follow us on Twitter and enjoy the hockey games this week. And we might have a Stanley Cup final and a new coach to talk about next week. And we'll talk to you then.